talk about fear, specifically glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. Before we start, I want you to write this question down on a piece of paper, and I want you to write your answer down. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen during a public speech? What is the absolute worst thing that could happen to you? So put me on pause, write that question down, write your answer down, and I will be here when you get back. Pause me. So I'm going to take a stab at what you may have answered. Maybe you said that you could die. Maybe you said that your audience would view you as nervous. So they would see your hands quivering maybe they would see your palms sweating, or maybe they would see your pit sweating, or maybe you would stutter, maybe you would see some kind of physical nervousness. Or maybe you said that you would forget, you would blank out and you would forget some of your speech, okay? All very normal things, all very possible things except for dying. I've never heard of anybody dying during a public speech, but all very normal things outside of the dying, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about how to think about those things first, and then I'm going to give you some coping mechanisms, okay? So first of all, the first thing that you need to know is that fear comes from your brain, okay? So you heard that you were going to give a public speech, and all of a sudden you feel like someone's running after you with an axe. I mean, literally that's how your body is reacting, because if someone was running after you with an axe, what would happen is your adrenaline would rush and your heart would start to beat faster, which would make your body get really hot. And when your body gets really hot, what do you have to do? Sweat so that you don't die, because you can die if you don't sweat. You would die from heat. So sweating is essentially a good thing. You want to sweat so that you don't die. And then some of you get nervous because you're nervous. You get nervous because the audience sees your nerves, which is crazy. So basically, you tell yourself that you're going to die. Your body reacts to it, which makes you more nervous because you think the audience can tell that you told yourself that you were going to die. Are you following this? So the first thing you need to do is not tell yourself that you're going to die, because you're not going to die. And the second thing that you need to do is kind of restructure the way you're thinking, okay? The third and if you ask me, the most important thing that you could do is breathe. Why? Because your brain controls your whole body. And what is the one thing that your brain needs? Oxygen. So you have to breathe. You have to breathe. The first thing that you should do when you hear you're going to give a public speech is breathe. Okay? And when you breathe, your body will get, your brain will get what it needs to tell yourself to do the right things. Now let's talk about some things that you can tell yourself to do. You can tell yourself that the audience is not your enemy, okay? And when you think about orienting your brain to the audience, there are two different ways that you can orient yourself to the audience. First is performance orientation, okay? Performance orientation is not what you want. Performance orientation is you viewing the audience as some kind of villain, some kind of body of people that is just judging you and wants to see you fail, okay? That's performance orientation. You're worried about how you're looking and how the audience is viewing you and all of that. Communication orientation is you viewing the audience as a body of people precious body of people that you have precious information to deliver to them. Okay? That is a healthy view of the audience, because then you're focused on the message as opposed to focusing on your image or focusing on the audience's judgments of you. All right? This, not that. The next thing that you can do is visualize success. Okay? You need to see yourself succeeding. Visualization involves the whole concept of if you can see it, then you can do it. That simple. See yourself succeeding. Know that you have prepared for your speech, be confident in it, and see yourself succeeding. It does help if you practice, because then you will have already seen yourself succeed. You will have that image in your mind. The next thing you can do is systematic desensitization. Okay? That involves a process of speech making, which is exactly what you're in this class to do, which is learn how to make a speech. So if you follow the steps, if you research, if you practice, if you deliver your speech, and you do these things more than once, as in more than just the day of the speech, then what will happen is you will transfer the calmness that you've developed over the process of practicing the speech. You will transfer that to the actual day that you're giving the speech. So you do all this research and you plan the speech and you practice, and you have done it already. You've done it so many times that you're calm. You're calm. You're ready. You're ready to go. And that's what systematic desensitization is. You're desensitizing yourself to the fear of it all. Okay? And my last gold nugget for you is cognitive restructuring. This has everything to do with your self-talk. What are you telling yourself? Okay? You know all those negative thoughts that you thought about when I asked you what is the worst thing that could happen? And you thought of things like dying, and you thought of things like sweaty palms, and you thought of things like forgetting your speech. And maybe some of you thought of people throwing tomatoes at you. I don't know. But all those things are not the worst. They're just not the worst. And to prove it to you, I'm going to pick a couple things. I'm first going to just toss dying out the window, because I've never heard of anyone dying from a speech. And not to say that that's not a valid feeling, but it's not practical. It's not going to happen, okay? The one that I'll probably address is the idea of forgetting your speech, because that's a valid, I mean, it's something that happens, okay? First thing I can tell you is this. This is a trick. If you are standing during a speech and you lock your knees, you are going to block oxygen from getting to your head, even if you're breathing. So don't do that, because you're going to have a hard time remembering your speech if you're blocking oxygen from getting to the one thing that's helping you remember your speech. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is this. If you forget, let's just say you forget. You practiced and you forgot. Have you ever been telling a friend a story and there was a point to the story, but you get to the end of the story and you forget what the point was? What do? Do you freak out? Do you faint? What do? No, you just say, man, I was telling you that story. There was a point. What was the point? That's what you do, because that's normal, because you're human. You're not a machine. So you're going to forget things, and that's okay. So you just need to pause. You need to remember what your plan was, because if you did plan the speech, you have a plan, and you should have some notes. So you need to refer to your notes, and then you just get yourself back on track. If you freak out, it's kind of done for you. So you don't freak out, okay? So all those negative thoughts, you're going to take those, and then you're going to ask yourself, are they rational or are they irrational? More times than not, they're irrational. Even the one where you're forgetting your speech, it's irrational to think that that's the worst thing that could happen. Okay? Then you're going to develop positive replacements for each thought. So you can think about, what would I do if, like I just said, because when you have a plan for such an occasion, then you feel more at ease. You have an evacuation plan, okay? But for those that are just completely irrational, like dying, or people throwing tomatoes at you, or people making horrible judgments of you, I can tell you most of the time when people are listening to speeches, they're more so just listening to what you're saying to see if they agree or if it makes sense. They're not really judging you as a person. They're just listening to what you're saying. So make sense. Plan to make sense. Okay? But you got to replace those thoughts with positive ones. I planned this. I know what I'm talking about. I know how this is going to flow. I know how I intended for the audience to view it. So I'm prepared. So that's a good replacement. And then you need to incorporate those thoughts in everything you do up until that speech and after that speech, because it's a healthy thing to do. So replace negative thoughts, just throw them out the door, and put positive thoughts in the place of them.